we have a powerhouse guest today. Ashley Williams is on the show. Ashley has dedicated her career to helping individuals and organizations increase their overall happiness and satisfaction in life. As an emotional wellness advocate, Ashley has shared her insights and strategies with audiences all around the world. Ashley is also the 2022 Culture Builder of the Year for Baltimore, which honors her work to make children's happiness a policy priority. Sounds like the perfect guest for the Love Your Life show. I have really enjoyed digging into Ashley's body of knowledge, and I am just so honored that we can have her on the show today. So please join me in welcoming Ashley Williams to the Love Your Life show today. Hello, Ashley, and welcome to the Love Your Life show. I am so excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much, Susie. I'm like thrilled to be here.
Yay. Well, your background and your experience and your bio and everything is so impressive to me. I was just sharing a bit about how you inspire me before we started record. Could you share a little with the listeners about how you got to be doing what you're doing and what it is that you're doing?
Yeah, sure thing. Anytime I'm asked that question, I always wonder, what doorway should I step through first? I'll start through the professional doorway this time. So my background is in education, former educator and school leader, who was focused on the emotional health of staff and students. So that's where my passion for wellness started. But even before that, I was a college kid who suffered from depression. I was a college kid who was seeking proactive approaches to manage my own emotional experiences. And it was that which led me to mindfulness. So then I was interested in the science of my brain. What happens when I sit down and when I connect with my breath? And then it was like a window was open. Do you know how, like, if your home is feeling stuffy and stale and you open up a window and that fresh breeze comes in and everything is ripe and new again? That was my experience with mindfulness, with meditation. So I threw my whole heart at it and I joined the meditation community, and that work drives my passion in everything that I do. So I've been very blessed in that I get to travel and share these teachings with people around the world. And eventually it led me to the development of my company, Climb, which is an emotional health software for school-age children. So we meet them where it's interesting to them. Kids are interested in technology, they love it. And then we empower them with coping skills that they can carry around in their pockets. My personal belief is that the foundation of a healthy human is emotional intelligence. It impacts every aspect of a human life, from your mental health to how much money you make. There is a correlation between your emotional intelligence and your wealth. And so if we can teach this skill to young people at a very young age, we can change how we operate as humans. We can change how we operate as a society. And that's my ultimate goal.
Yeah, I mean that's like I heard you on an interview and you said you wanted to switch society through the practice of healthy emotional regulation. And I just had to
That's
like
right.
I remember I was walking on the bike path and I just like stopped and was like, "Oh, Ashley."
That's right. That's my goal.
Yeah.
Very ambitious.
I mean, but it's ambitious, and yet like it's something that we all have power over, our emotional intelligence. Like it actually doesn't, you're speaking of wealth, but it doesn't matter sort of what is going on, like the circumstances in our life right now, but we do have power over our brains and what we're thinking and how we're feeling, and that emotional regulation.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, that's just so. Can you bring me back a little to just, you as a college student and you're feeling depressed and there's something in you that thinks like, oh, okay, I'll try meditation, because I know that there are a lot of listeners who are not in college anymore who are, maybe feeling burnt out or blah or icky, and how would they start, but also how did that like even come
Did I
across?
get there?
Yeah.
Um, I just wanted to know, what can I do? I understand that this is about my brain chemistry. This is something that I'm moving through. This is not who I am. It's not what I am. I'm moving through something. And what can I do? That was the question that I asked myself.
Yeah.
And I remember going to my school library to use the computer. They had those desktops
Oh yeah, the
in
big
the
things.
library. And I think maybe Google was around. It might have been axe.com at the
Yeah,
time. I don't
yeah.
remember. But it led me to mindfulness. And I started very small. I think a lot of the times when we think about emotional regulation and emotional intelligence, the leap from where we are to where we want to be can seem insurmountable.
Mhm.
How do I cross this chasm?
Mhm.
If I'm here and I'm sitting in what I perceive as a very dark place, but where I want to be is fully illuminated. How do I get there? I just started sitting in my very dark place for just 30 seconds. That's
Oh, I
all
love
that I
that.
could do. I
Yeah.
started to meditate for 30 seconds because that's it. That's all that I could hold my attention for. But I just kept going. And so that is really the invitation to each of us. Keep going. A lot of times we'll start with self-care practices, be it yoga, or if that's interesting to you, or
Yeah.
meditation, if that's interesting to you, or a gratitude list, if that's interesting to you, whatever the practice might be. And it falls by the wayside. But it's the consistency of this work that changes those neurological pathways in our brain. So keep going. Even if you fall off, were multiple times over the years where I didn't practice every day, but you have to get up and you have to keep going because that's what makes the difference. That's where you start to give yourself the gift, of that peace that is really inside of you.
Well, yeah, and I just want to second this to all the listeners out there that I speak a lot about habits and everything you're saying, like start small, be consistent.
Yeah.
And some of the things we work with is like start small with maybe your eating habits and our brain will tell us like, oh, having this one salad at lunch isn't going to make a difference. And what I'm not going to get into the eating aspect of it, but what I can just back up with what you're saying is that small amount of meditation, 30 seconds. When I started, it was 1 minute. So I my inner Susie is just like, yay, thank you for giving me permission, Ashley. But that made a difference. I just said 1 minute and I noticed within a month. So, your brain might say it's too small, but just to keep going. And just, I love that you speak of that. Thank you very much. Because that's really inspiring, especially if you're in a dark place. It's like, you could do 30 seconds, 10 seconds.
That's right. And there's a saying, drop by drop, the bucket is full. So it's those steady, consistent drops that get us there.
Tell
It
me
doesn't
about that.
have
What do you mean? Drop by drop?
drop by drop. Every raindrop in a bucket contributes to that bucket being full.
Oh,
So
I like
that
that.
30 seconds that I chose was a drop in my bucket. And then the
Yeah.
next time I chose 30 seconds, it's a drop in my bucket. And it was those 30 seconds that led me to the 15 minutes, that led me to the 30 minutes. And so it's those drops that get us there. So,
Yeah.
the drops are okay. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be a waterfall. A drop is good. Another
Yeah.
really helpful thing is to remember exactly what you were saying, Susie, the way the mind works. The mind will speak to us in language that contradicts our desires. And it's helpful if we're aware of that and just say, this is the process. I'm not doing anything wrong if my brain wants something in opposition that I want because the brain has been trained in that direction. And so when I notice that in myself, and this is an ongoing practice, when we notice that within ourselves, like say, I want to meditate, but your brain is like, "Ugh, I don't feel like it.
I
I
don't
have
have
1,000
time.
things." Yeah. And that's the big one. There's never enough time.
Mhm.
It's okay for you to feel that. Like that's normal. And we can still choose anyway to find that 30 seconds. We can choose anyway. So one thing I've done is just made peace with the thoughts. The thoughts are going to come. I make peace with them. And then I'm going to do what I want to do anyway.
Yeah. Oh, I really appreciate that. And I really like it's sort of turning down that volume. Like, thank you, brain. And I'm still doing it. And also the drop by drop, I really like because it gives you more of that growth mindset instead of focusing on, oh, it's only 30 seconds. And I know that, Yoo-hoo professional does 20 minutes 4 times a day, and that we're comparing ourselves against the gap, but to focus on that gain, like, hey, I got a drop in my bucket today. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I really like that. Can you tell me a little more, like, because you speak of emotional intelligence and emotional regulation, but what if the listener is even like, what is emotional intelligence? Is it something I
Very
need
good
to?
question. I
Mhm.
wanted to answer that question. So, emotional intelligence is just the ability to identify and understand your own emotional processes. And then that skill gives you the ability to empathize and understand the emotional processes of other humans. It
Mm.
seems so simple, but it is often one of the most challenging things for us as humans. Many times we don't even know what we feel. We
Mm-mm.
don't know what we feel, and it comes out in our behaviors. Right?
Mhm.
We find ourselves in behaviors that feel like cyclical. I keep choosing this behavior which is not leading to the outcomes that I want for my life, and I'm not sure what's driving it. but
Mm.
but if we're able to step back, identify that emotion, we can then look at the thought processes that are inspiring the emotions that are creating the behaviors. So it's the
Mm.
science of self-awareness and
Yeah.
increasing your self-awareness so that you understand your internal patterns, how you operate. And once you understand those internal patterns and how you operate, you have so much empathy for other people because others are having the exact same experience.
Mm.
And often when we lack that self-awareness, when we lack that emotional intelligence, we look at others through a critical lens because it's through the lens of what I would do or
Mm.
how I operate, the way my patterns are set. And every human has their own set of patterns and how they're navigating their world based off of their perception, which is based off of the thoughts in their
Yeah.
heads, which are inspired by their emotions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really, so connecting the dots with how you're speaking about meditation a little bit earlier, and my own experience, what I have found is that meditation helps me slow down that process in my brain. Like, I'm just more aware of catching myself. Would you say that's your experience too, or?
That's absolutely correct. That's like, here's the nail, here's the hammer, you
Okay.
nailed it. That is absolutely my experience. What meditation does is helps us to step back from the patterns that are in
Mhm.
operation within
Okay.
us to notice them. So we start to make the connections.
Mhm.
This is how I've been operating. Oh, wow. When this thing happens, I naturally fall into irritation or I
Mm.
naturally fall into despair or whatever that emotional stickiness might be. We can
Mhm.
notice it. And then we can notice what situation is inspiring it. And another really wonderful thing about meditation is that it naturally melts those emotional charges, if that makes
Mm.
sense. So meditation will heal those neural pathways in the brain that go immediately towards irritation, that
Mm.
go immediately towards despair, and will help us to develop new ones, healthier ones.
Mm.
It's almost like you're creating your own path for your life when
Ah.
you sit down to meditate, as opposed to going on the path that we have created since we were children. A lot
Mhm.
of the neural pathways that we have, we saw something when we were a kid, our parents did it, we saw it in society, so it becomes automatic.
Mm.
Meditation helps us to step away from that automation process that we can be in and start to notice that and say like, oh wow, like this, I don't have to choose this. It's like these behaviors are driven by what I've seen uh, from when I was a child or
Mm.
whatever the experience may be. But it does help us to create our own path in life through forming new pathways in our brain.
Mm. Yeah, I'm so appreciative of you connecting the dots, and then also with sharing what emotional intelligence is. And so I imagine, I know most of my listeners are well-educated people, and this is probably not the first time they're hearing of emotional intelligence, but they um after hearing your great story are probably like, okay, I want more of that. Like, where do I check the box and learn this skill? And I really appreciate how you speak to how it's not a sort of one and done, but it's a skill that we build. Could you speak a little more about that? And then also maybe what they could do, like where they could start to work on emotional.
Yeah, for sure. I always say that emotional intelligence is the work of a lifetime. And there are different skills that we build at different ages. So if we're children, we're not having this conversation about identifying your thought patterns and connecting them to your emotions. It's just the ability to identify like an emotion. Like this is what
Mm,
anger feels like. And
yeah.
this is what joy feels like. And to be able to say, like, this is what I'm experiencing, that's healthy emotional regulation for a child.
Mm,
Um, and then as we get a little older, as we get into like middle school, that self-awareness increases. And then it's like I'm able to pivot my emotional experiences. So if I feel angry,
mm,
here's a breathing technique that I can use to reduce the anger in my body. And so as a middle school student, as a high school student, we have the ability to do that skill. But a lot of times we don't learn it in middle school. We don't
right.
learn it in so we're adults and we still don't know what to do when we
hmm
feel anger in our body, when we feel frustrated,
Or
when we
even
feel
what that
sadness.
feels like. Like you're just saying this and you're like,
Or
this is
even
what middle schoolers do. And I was like, I know I was a middle schooler at 40. I didn't know what anger felt like in my body. Yeah.
that's exactly right. That we have the capacity to learn that in middle
Right.
school, but we're not learning it. And
Yeah.
so some of the skills to help us with that are like small breathing techniques
Mm,
that we can incorporate throughout the day. There's the three method of just inhaling in three and then exhaling on three. You can extend it to seven if that feels natural for you.
mm,
And these small techniques do wonders on the brain. It really
mhm.
does. The thing about a skill set like the breathing technique, for example, you want to be in the practice of the breathing technique before you get to the moment of anger, before you get to the moment of frustration, because it's almost like, you know, if you are a fireman or a firewoman and you put out fires, you are training before you get to the
For
fire.
sure.
A
For
lot of
sure.
times we're not trained. And
Mm,
so the breathing technique is that training. So when you get to that fire of frustration, when you get to that fire of anger, you know exactly what to do. You have all of the skills. But
mm,
if we're not in the training and then we're angry and we just start breathing, we're frustrated. It's not
yeah,
it's
of
not
course.
there, if that
hmm
makes sense. So it's really helpful to begin long before the anger, just finding the time.
So what would you
Meditation again.
suggest? Oh, I'm sorry to
Go
interrupt.
ahead, Susie. No, you got it,
No,
please.
I'm just wondering, like, what would you suggest sort of like if you know, say a listener is listening and they're like, oh yeah, I often, maybe when's the time that I feel angry? It's when my partner does this or when my kid does this. Would you sort of rehearse that breathing ahead of time, like imagining yourself there, or how
That
would you
that
suggest?
that's one way. So that's like a meditation where we're projecting
Mm,
wellness into the future. So that's an
hmm
excellent way. You can just sit down, you can close your eyes, you can set the scene, you can see the conversation that you know will inspire
mm,
that frustration or that anger within you. And while you're there, you can connect to that feeling of pure love.
mm,
Love melts
right.
these negative emotions. It's like how the sun can melt mist in the
Mm,
morning, it just naturally melts it. So if we can, in our projections, cultivate that feeling of love, one way of
mm,
cultivating that feeling of love is just bringing to mind a person, a memory, an experience that's just effortless.
mm,
Let that rise up in that scene. You will notice a difference when you get to that moment.
mm, mm,
Another way, one more technique that I want to offer specific to if somebody frustrates us. If we know that this person frustrates us or this person irritates us or causes us anger, before we get to the situation, I always encourage to journal out what about the conversation
oh, that's good.
inspires that anger? What about the conversation inspires the fear? Very often, it's not the person, it's
Mhm.
something that we experienced in our past. Like, this
Mm,
triggers me because X, Y, and Z.
mm,
We want to keep asking the question until we figure out what the trigger is. Even
mm,
if we say like they're just annoying, what about it is annoying? Because the
mm.
annoyance is within us.
So you're
It's not
getting to
like
the
in
thoughts there. Yeah, you're like, what are the thoughts that are causing the annoyance
that's
or the,
exactly right. So
yeah.
just keep digging, keep journaling, keep probing until you
Mm,
get to the real reason why the
mm,
response comes out in that way.
mm. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so appreciative. Like, this is just wonderful. And I think, that you're really giving a lot of examples as to how this can help the person. Cause I know a lot of my listeners are busy and they're, it is that thought, like, I don't have time. But what you're giving the inspiration for is how it will help us feel better. Like, you feel better when you're not angry and reactive and flying around. What are some other benefits of practicing mindfulness or meditation?
Oh my goodness. Not only do you feel better, it improves your body physically.
Oh,
Like you
really?
actually reduce stress hormones in your body.
Mm,
Cortisol is reduced when you practice mindfulness. And a lot of times we're stressed. That impacts how our heart health, it impacts our mental health,
mm.
right? So there's the physical benefit. We sleep
So can
better.
I just pause you for 1 second? Because I just want all my listeners to hear that. Like, so many people have gone to their doctors and they're like, your cortisol's high. And you just said like 30 seconds of meditation a day when we're telling ourselves we don't have time. Like, that's going to help. So there's a good
That's right.
prescription from Ashley.
it, it's
Thank you.
going to help. It's going to lower your blood pressure, which is amazing. And you're
Yeah.
going to sleep better. You will
Mm,
have better sleep.
mm,
If you have insomnia, it can help improve insomnia. It helps to manage your weight. Like, this
mm,
is amazing stuff. It
mm,
helps to increase your attention span. There's
mm.
so many benefits to mindfulness that you only get through the practice. I love
Yeah.
talking about it. And I always say, like, I can talk about this till I'm blue in the face, and I literally could talk about this till I'm blue in the face. But the beauty, the realization comes from having a seat, closing your eyes,
Mm,
and breathing.
mhm.
A really funny, not even funny, but inspirational story about this. My mom called me today. I was on my way to the dentist and she called me like, I did it. I've been meditating. I've been meditating for like a week. And it's like amazing. I can't believe she was just going 1,000 miles a minute.
Wow.
And of course, I've talked to my mom about it on more than 20
Right.
occasions.
Exactly. Probably more than
But she
20,000,
was
right?
having her own realization. And
Mm,
there's nothing like that light bulb when it goes over,
mhm.
goes on over your head. It doesn't matter what I'm saying. When you
Mm.
realize it for yourself, it's just goes really beyond words.
Mhm. Yes, and I just all the things you're speaking of, again, like these connections between, you just mentioned weight loss, which unfortunately is sometimes on a lot of women's minds. They're like, how does it help with weight loss? And it's exactly what you're saying. It's that in the same way that it helps with anger, you feel angry and you maybe have the urge to yell at your kid or your spouse or whomever. You see the cookie and you have the urge to eat it, or the urge, and you like, what you're doing with meditation is strengthening that muscle of the pause of, okay, I'm noticing the sensation in my body, what do I want to do with it?
That's exactly right. It helps
Yeah,
you to have positive eating habits because
yeah,
you're choosing
you're
your
more
choice,
mindful,
not you're
right?
choosing. It's not like your habit, your habitual stance
Hmm.
choosing for you.
Yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
You just said something important there that you had said in the beginning too, that I want to circle back to, that when you were sharing how you got started in all of this, you were looking, you were in a very dark place and looking at like, what could you control? And what you could control was inside your head. And I know that there are many people struggling right now, and there's so many things going on outside of us in the world, and that I just want to bring focus back to what you're sharing, and this gem, that it's like, what can we control and what can we not control? And that, when we're mixing those two, we can feel very stressed. But to zoom in and focus on this, what we can control, and the emotional regulation piece, whether it's regulating our emotions because we feel an urge to eat a cookie, or we are regulating our emotions because we feel the urge to yell. I really appreciate that. That's really a gem, and part of your whole mission to that's how it changes the world. Like, people might think, oh, breathing, really? But yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And yes. So you've given us some great tips and tools. Could you share a little, like, if it just sort of, I just want to connect between the emotional intelligence piece and emotional regulation, since, you know, you really do want to switch society through the practice of healthy emotional regulation? What would emotional, like, where could a listener start with practicing healthy emotional regulation, if they want
Emotional
to?
regulation is the outcome of the tools that we're talking about.
Mhm.
That'll naturally take care of itself,
Mhm.
you know. And so I don't know that I can say to anyone, do this for emotional regulation,
Mhm.
because if you're not in the practice prior to that reactivity, you're just going to be in your same natural habitat, if you will.
Mhm. Right.
Um, so yeah, so the emotional regulation comes through the practice of the skills. That
Mhm.
will be a natural thing. And emotional regulation in the home, for example, if you have children, might look like the way you speak to your children. A lot of
Mm.
times, I have a 10-year-old daughter. I know what it's like. You have a full life, you're
Yeah.
busy, and then sometimes you're not speaking to your children in a way that is healthy or in a way that reinforces positive emotional
Mhm.
experiences in the home. And this will happen without having to address it, you know, just
Mm.
from being in the practice of the tools. Another real life example of where we can notice improve emotional regulation is in the workplace. The
Mm.
boss comes down and says, hey, do this thing, and you're frustrated. You know, like, you don't feel heard, you don't feel respected, you feel like there's one more thing to do. Healthy emotional regulation in that situation means that I can articulate how I feel in a
Mm.
way that that supports and honors me and is respectful at the same time. Like, I can
Mm.
say what I feel and honor myself. Because a lot of times emotional dysregulation looks like not being able to honor ourselves, not being
Oh,
able to articulate where we truly are and what we really feel, because
mm.
we're wearing the burden of other people's emotions, right?
Mm.
We are more concerned about maintaining uh, the emotional health of other people as opposed
Mm.
to our own.
Oh, I really like that. And that rings true, because whether I'm at home or at work, if I am sort of unregulated, and I might, you know, as you said with your daughter, maybe I am snippy or yelling, or like, it is not expressing my true intent, that I'm sort of self-abandoning myself. So I think what I would, you know, really, I want to sort of empower listeners with, is to go back to middle school in our emotional intelligence, because most of us were not taught this in school. And when I hear of your 10-year-old daughter, I'm just, you know, there's so many things you're saying, like you just said, if you're frustrated at work, I think a lot of us don't know that first step that you spoke of, that like, what do these emotions feel like in our body? So even to start to learn, like, you know, the more we can learn, it's almost like we have a little chart, and like frustration. Okay, what does that feel like? Does that feel tight in my chest? Does that feel hot? Does that feel, okay, I've done
That's
frustration.
right.
What does anger feel like? What is
That's right.
irritation? Starting to learn there. Would you say that might be helpful?
I absolutely think that's helpful. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Susie, because emotions often feel physical. They
Mm.
can even feel like an illness,
Mm.
right? It can feel like nausea. Some emotions feel like
Oh,
nausea
for
or a
sure.
racing heart. It might feel like a panic attack, some
Hmm.
emotions. So starting to learn, where do I feel joy even
Yeah.
in my body? And then I can live from that place where I feel joy in my
Mm.
body. Do I feel excitement in my body? What does that feel like for
Mm.
me? You
Yeah.
know, because really what we're reaching for as we practice emotional intelligence is to live more in the consciousness of those healthy emotions. That's what
Mm.
this is about. To live
Mm.
out that joy that's inside of us, that calm that's inside of
Mm.
us, that peace that's inside of us.
Mm.
That's pretty much what we want as humans. Almost all of the activities, we're like busy beavers building dams, and all of the dams that
Yes,
we're
we
building
are.
in our lives, we're trying to create more happiness for ourselves,
Mm.
you know, but that's all we're doing. And we're doing it in a million different ways and
Mhm.
calling it a million different things. If I get this car, I'm going to be a lot more happier. If I get
Mm.
this degree, I'm going to be a lot more happier. If my child goes to this school, if this situation falls into place in this way, we're doing all of these things to be happy. And all we need to do is to sit down and to pause and to
Mm.
connect with what's already here,
Mm.
what's already present.
Mm. Yes, Amen. Like I absolutely, you're speaking my language. I run a class called Happiness Habits, and it's absolutely like happiness is available right here. So I
That's right.
just have this vision of us running around these little beavers in a dam, and it's that like frenzied energy. And I really would really invite listeners to try to get good at their emotional intelligence right now. What does joy feel like? Like when you said that, and if listeners right now are able to just sort of pause and release their shoulders, because when you said that with me, I felt like the little tingly go through me. And we need to be more able to feel these emotions when they're coming, either to sit and marinate in them like joy, or I know for me, when I first realized what anxiety felt like in my body, it was like I couldn't take a deep breath, and I'd catch myself like gasping for air, still doing what I was doing, like making the lunches. And then I was like, slow down, like you're a human being, not just a human doing, like just notice, why are you anxious? And then that gives us the opportunity to move into what you were talking about, is the high school level of development, of pivoting and all of that. But I don't think we can ever do enough to start just really learning what the emotion feels like in our body, what's that physical sensation, slowing that process down.
And, I don't know that there is a level, there is no in level mastery of this.
Right.
We keep doing it forever. We keep doing it. Anger will always arise. It's how we greet it that will change. That's the only thing that will change for us. And so, in my body, anger feels like a stone. Everything becomes tight and heavy. So if I notice I'm a stone, okay, there's some anger here. Like, because my behavior is not saying I'm angry. My behavior is just coming from that stone place, if that makes sense. But if
Yes.
I have the awareness of that, then I can pivot. And this is after years of the practice. And so these emotions, as long as we have human bodies, they will arise. And so we are encouraged to be gentle with ourselves and to celebrate ourselves for whatever progress that we make. Because a lot of times we think that there's a finish line, like we're running a marathon and I'm going to get to the end and I'm going to get my award and I'm going to
Ashley's
hold
going
up
to
my
give me the
medal.
emotional intelligence certificate, and I am regulated.
It's not like that. The rewards of this are peace, clarity, joy, excitement, just having a good time with life. That's the reward for this. There's no medal for completion.
That is so inspiring. I also find, like, for me, some of that peace comes from knowing that I can handle, like, it's like, okay, I can feel angry. Like, I'm not gonna, like, I don't have to yell and scream and go break something. Like, I've got this, that sort of level. I really, that's very empowering and uplifting and encouraging is the word I'm looking for to hear. That it's like, it's not that we're going for this finish line. Like, there's no wrong if we're feeling anger, or happiness doesn't mean the absence of these other things. It's to greet them with kindness, compassion, with some of the warmth that Ashley's bringing to us today. I really appreciate your message. And if listeners want to hear more from you and get more Ashley, just love and feel good feelings, where should I direct them?
I think Instagram is best. I love to hang out on Instagram and just talk about this stuff. This is like my favorite thing to do. To talk about what I'm living out, to share what's inside of me. And so my Instagram handle is Kashi, that's KASHI_unlimited. And as a note, Kashi is a name that was given to me from my meditation teacher. So it's a Sanskrit name, and it just means light. It just means shining.
Oh, you are. Oh, you are. Oh, I love that. Well, thank you for shining your light with us today. I will have those links, listeners, in the show notes at smbwell.com/248. And I am so appreciative of your light. I feel your light. I'm over here on the other side of the world, Ashley, and it's just, I'm so inspired by what you're doing. And my body right now is zinging in energy and just gratitude for you. So that's what gratitude's feeling like in my body. Thank you very much for bringing this to the listeners.
Thank you
today.
so much. This is fantastic.
Yay. Hey, warriors, I wanted to jump in here at the end of the episode and just let you know of the wonderfulness of this interview and the timing, that if you are interested in setting up a practice for yourself, whether it's 30 seconds or 3 minutes, what Ashley was talking about this month in the membership, this is what we're doing. We're doing meditating in May. So whenever you are listening to this, if it is sometime in the month of May 2023 and you want to start that practice, get over to smbwell.com/membership and jump in to my membership. It's an adult school. You can do it just for a month to really hammer in this habit, and let's go. All right, warriors, I'll see you there.